Welcome to the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we, a business owner and an artist, discuss the business of art and the art of business. Hey friends, I'm Carl, founder of Epic Made, and Ross is out today, so I'll be solo hosting. This is the Pixel Retentive Podcast, is where we share our thoughts on creativity, art, and business. Past guests include Duncan Alney of Firebelly Marketing, Steven DeSordo of Deckhand, and Lizzie Mentis of Here's Waldo. We're forever grateful for the supporters of our podcast, and we're always looking for more sponsors. That said, Pixel Retentive is brought to you by the creative gurus at Epic Made. Epic Made is a team of artists and strategists with a mastery of visual storytelling. Our studio makes unforgettable animation and graphic illustration infused with ideas that put money in your pocket. We best serve marketers and brands seeking to engage nerdy audiences, and some of our favorite clients include Nickelodeon, WWE, and Sci-Fi. Visit getepicmade.com and let's collaborate on your next creative campaign. All right, so with us today, we have Justine Clay. Justine is a business coach, writer, speaker, and ADHD coach for creative freelancers and entrepreneurs. Her actionable profit by design framework, using her actionable profit by design framework, Justine helps creative freelancers and entrepreneurs of all stripes identify and articulate their unique value and build a fulfilling, efficient, and profitable creative business. All right. Welcome to the show, Justine.
Well, thank you for having me, Carl.
Yeah, our pleasure. All right. So before, I guess my pleasure, because Ross isn't here today. Apologies. I do that a lot, I'm sure. Yeah. Ross is happy to have you too. He's just plugging away right now on a big project, so couldn't make it. But before we jump into today's topic, we want our audience to get to know you a little bit better. So can you tell us how long you've been in your industry and the project you're most proud of so far?
So I have been working with freelance creators since 1996, if you can believe that. So in a previous life, I was an agent for top-level freelance creative talent in New York City and beyond. And I used to represent art directors, copywriters, fashion illustrators, etc. And then I started my coaching business where I coach creative freelancers and entrepreneurs. I started that in 2010. So I've been doing that for 14 years. And there was an overlap of about 4 years where I had two businesses and a kid, and it was crazy town.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how long I've been doing it. And my favorite project so far, now that's an interesting one because I'm a little bit different from some of your guests in that I don't necessarily do projects. I work with clients.
Sure.
But I do a lot of speaking and teaching and writing. I do workshops or webinars. That's where we met. And so those are projects. I create a workshop. I create a talk. I'm in the process of writing a book, which will be to help creative entrepreneurs and freelancers build businesses. So I would say that the project I'm most proud of is always the writing or speaking project that I'm working on at this moment, because it's creating hopefully something new and helpful for the audience I serve.
Yeah, I can attest to that is what you do, because I listened to your webinar that you did with the Guild on just creativity and ADD and all those things, and that's how we end up here, as you mentioned. So awesome, I love that. Cool. So today we wanted to get into, building a creative company while simultaneously having ADD or ADHD. Obviously those two variations of a similar thing, I suppose. I don't know. I don't get into the weeds of all that. I guess they removed the H at some point or some. I don't know.
No, they put it in. So the correct term now is ADHD, even if a person doesn't typically present as the hyperactive part.
Got you. Is that just because the brain's hyperactive in there?
That's exactly what it is. So some people are outwardly hyperactive, but if they're even the inattentive presentations, there's a lot of rumination and overthinking and a million things going on. So it's, I guess it's internalized or externalized hyperactivity.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So during your presentation that I saw, you really got into some things that were just like, it was interesting to just feel very seen and like, maybe I'm not so bizarre of a human being. And it's interesting that like so many of us with this condition, either self-diagnosed or professionally diagnosed, end up in creative professions, right? Like it's the number like flips insanely. And I know you mentioned some of that. So, I mean, I'd love to hear, some of your experience in terms of like what that looks like in terms of, creative professions versus like just everyone else kind of thing.
Yeah. So to give a bit of context to the folks who weren't in that presentation and don't know me, that workshop was business strategies for ADHD creatives. And just to kind of like give a little bit of background, I'm actually neurotypical, and my business has always been being a business, well, for the last 14 years, being a business coach. What happened, there was a kind of turning point in my career. As I mentioned, I became a parent along that journey, and one of my kids, as he grew, was diagnosed with ADHD. And, the reason we ended up getting a diagnosis was because it was very clear that, he and I particularly thought and acted and processed very differently. And it was kind of this sort of eye-opening moment of just like, oh, which he really does. He operates differently from me. And then we so later learned that my husband kind of operates similarly too. So we're a neurodiverse family. So as this kind of like, I was diving into this and learning more about, ADHD for my kid, I started to recognize that a lot of my clients were telling me that they either had ADHD, they were in the process of getting a diagnosis for ADHD. And when I started to kind of like look into the numbers, I was like, I think about a third of my clients like identify this way. And that kind of like blew my mind. And so I started to look into ADHD coaching. Was that a thing? Because I realized that as a neurotypical person who had sort of previously been pretty unaware of like the differences of brain wirings and all that kind of comes out of that, I started to think, gosh, is my process helpful to everybody I'm working with, or is it really helpful for people who think like me? And that was a good question to ask, because the answer I came up with was like, I think it could be better. I think it could be more inclusive. I think I could have more tools in my toolbox to really meet my clients wherever they are and to help them build strategies and plans and accountability and tools and all of those things that will help them move forward in a way that works for them rather than a way that aligns with what I think is moving forward. So I went and got an ADHD coaching certification. It was a year-long program and very eye-opening. So what that has, I think now I'm trying to like go back to what the initial question was.
No worries.
Why do so many people, why do I think so many folks in the creative field have ADHD? Is that the more I learn, the more I realize that a traditional work structure, meaning sitting in a cubicle from 9 till 5, attending meetings, having this maybe sort of very top-down sort of leadership management process, just doesn't work for a neurodivergent brain type a lot of times. Ladies, they need to be able to think big picture. They need to work in different ways, different cadences, maybe different work environments, all of these things. And a lot of times there's like a lot of ideas that they may be coming up with that are not living in the world because it's not fitting into this very sort of constrained structure that's being imposed on them. So they go out and they start their own businesses. And that kind of bears out. I was trying to find some statistics because I'm actually giving a talk on this week at the Creativity Conference on neurodivergence and creativity. But the population of neurodivergent folks in the general population is around like, 15 to 20%. The estimate of neurodivergence in entrepreneurs is more like 40 to 55%.
That makes so much sense.
I personally wouldn't be surprised if it was higher, honestly. Yeah. So, it lends itself very well to a neurodivergent brain, right? Mm. That is more divergent in its thinking, right? But of course, as you can probably attest to, there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes with running a business that doesn't come so easily. to maybe, someone whose executive function is, not quite so strong. So
yeah, no, great answer. So, that pops some thoughts into my head. You got me thinking like that cubicle life, right? Like when I was in college, I took a job doing IT work on a government base, and like we're over here in Norfolk, and I had my clearance, and I had to go through all these things and all this stuff, and like I hated it with a power and sat in a cubicle in this huge room that was like 2 football fields of call centers, and like I was like I literally like wanted to die rather than go to work because it was so miserable and so mundane and so all these little rules, and I couldn't wear a hat and I had to have a shirt on with a tie and I had to be tucked in and all that. And it was just like so much egregious corporate bullshit. I would get sick to my stomach Sunday morning before I went in. Before like Sunday, I would be dreading all day Monday until I finally just quit and just started my own business. And I've never looked back. And that was 2007 when I quit that job. And I wonder that I didn't really attest that or connect that to having ADD. I didn't even know I had ADD at the time because I had built all these systems and processes, which was so kind of eye-opening hearing some of your stuff. It's like I innately at some point in my childhood developed these, keep lists and have a routine and do things so that like I could overcome some of these things that I didn't know that everybody didn't deal with. I thought that was just how you had to function, right? Like, so putting all this together as an adult is just a fascinating thing, like understanding myself with this kind of introspection. So one question I had for you following up from all that was just like, what are some of the different approaches? Like, so you coach entrepreneurs and creatives. So what are some of the different approaches that you have applying to, hey, this is a neurotypical person versus someone with ADHD? Like, hey, you should do it this way. Oh, you got ADHD. Well, let me give you the other advice. Like, what are some good examples of that?
It's a great question. And I would say it's not as binary as that. Like and also, a lot of people may not know they have it. I have like my suspicions about folks, like not suspicions, that's the wrong word, but I'm just like, I think, there's definitely some neurodivergence in there, I think, and they maybe don't know yet, or they have some suspicions of it themselves. But, so it's not always so clear as someone saying, hey, I have ADHD, like give me the ADHD package.
Got it.
More of I would say it's more of an awareness around who the person is and really listening to them, right? Because I would kind of call myself a coach / consultant. In that consulting sort of like mindset, a lot of times that sort of manifests as someone saying, I've figured out a process that works. What that really means is it works for me and people who think like me. And I'm going to take you through that process and you're going to get the same results as I've got, right? Building out that awareness, it's like, I do have a process, but that, to your point about the routines, it forms a structure that we can kind of like, that can be like a container for us to play in. But then how we approach things is completely flexible and guided by what the person is either telling me they need or what I'm hearing that they need, like listening between the lines, if you like.
Got it.
Right?
Okay.
So it's really more of an approach than a like, you're going to get this version or you're going to get that version. And, I got these 2 questions and it was from a book. I can't remember which one it was. I think it was called Laser Coaching or something. And she said that she has these 2 questions and the question she asks herself as a coach, internal. And when someone's talking, and, as you know, with folks with ADHD, there's a lot of like talking and verbal processing, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times like you're hearing like a lot of stories and a lot of things that don't seem like they're necessarily related to the business. And a neurotypical person like myself might be like, okay, let me just get them to the good stuff. Let me get into the thing that they're paying me to do. But the question is, why are they telling me this? And the follow-up question is, and what makes this a problem for them? Asking those 2 questions for me makes me listen in a different way. Because even if they're telling me a story about something that's going on with their kid or something that's going on in their house or something where a client didn't pay or they kept them waiting, it's oftentimes speaking to maybe a feeling of disempowerment or overwhelmment or them not having clear boundaries or processes or structures with their clients. So there's always something in there that is absolutely relatable to the challenges they're having in their business. But I'm going to listen differently.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, something else you said earlier too that I think was interesting. Like I think being ADD really does stimulate. And as I think about like all the entrepreneurs I know, and like my father and me and my three brothers, like we're all unemployable, right? Like we could not work a 9 to 5 for someone. Like so, we all have businesses, right? And I look at like my cousins, and I have like 17 cousins. We have like 14 businesses, right? Like it's crazy, right? So there's genetic things going on there. Well, something you said that I thought was interesting is that yeah, I mean being a hustle grind mode and like get up and like figure it out and being adaptable and having ideas and connecting dots and just boom, 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 boom is amazing to be an entrepreneur and to start. Like, and that works really great with ADHD. What doesn't convert very well is going from entrepreneur, startup, hustler to executive level CEO and creating systems and processes and managing a bunch of people and do like that. That for me has been a whole other animal where it's like, I'm not like, I know in my heart of hearts, like I can do anything, right? Like if I focus enough and I get into a hyper focus lane, I can do whatever I want. I've never gotten to a spot where I poured my whole self into something and I didn't do a good job. That said, some things are fucking exhausting. Like, and some things I can do unlimitedly better than anybody because of the way I'm wired, right? So I've had to navigate that and that introspection and like figure that. And like, I don't ever want to be an operations director. Like that is not my jam. Like, you know what I mean? I don't want to come up with systems and processes and then create the whole thing and fill out all this stuff. Like, I don't mind running through a thing and having a schedule, but like creating that whole system is a lot. Like it's a lot.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes, there is. And so I know that wasn't a question, but I want to just speak to that because you're absolutely right. And I think that where we get into, and that's sort of like the sweet spot of where I work with people. It's people who are relatively successful as a freelancer, but they want to shift from being a freelancer to a business owner. And being a business owner is a very different mindset. And in order to operate in that way, all of those things that you say, the operational side of things has to start like picking up. It can't just be catch as can do anymore, or one person doing it all. Right. Now, no business really thrives, I don't think, when it's one person trying to do everything. Even if it's just you and like a part-time other person, if there is someone who is complementary to you, and I know that you talk about your creative director this way, is that person acts almost as like an integrator, right? They understand you and they understand your vision and but they also understand how to now translate that and communicate that to the other folks who are the doers, right? Every project, every business needs dreamers and it needs doers.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. And what we need to know is like, how do we find, and I think we tend to gravitate to people who are like us. I mean, I've said to my son, who has ADHD, I would say to him, when you start dating, it's going to be really tempting to find someone just like you. Think about someone who is complementary to you.
Yes.
That's what me and my husband are like, and it works.
It
right?
does.
But if you've got two people who are exactly the same, whether it's like, super organized and regimented, like that could be really like uptight, or too loose and free, and it could be like a shit show, excuse my language, no. Right? So it's kind of the same with business. Like you may like really jive with someone who's another visionary and like, you guys are like spinning up and thinking of all of the ideas and we could do this and we could do that. That's not your integrator. Your integrator is like, I get you, I hear you. We're going to park that idea for now and let's focus on something that we started and that we're like, 7/8 of the way through. Let's do that, right? Because that's our money generating. That's our money on the table opportunity right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I got Ross on the team 11 years ago, I didn't realize who he was at first. And I didn't have all that introspection that you just mentioned that I totally get now. But yeah, as we started to develop the business along, I started realizing like this guy can just get shit done. Like, and he sees what I'm saying, like, and he'll just come to me with like, all right, check out this website we just built, or we're just redoing the brand. It's like, yes. Because I have a million great ideas, right? That's part of the condition, or if you will. But yeah, a million great ideas is nothing if it doesn't get executed at all. Or you get 5 steps in and you move to the next one, right? And that's, you see that with a lot of entrepreneurs too that are, probably ADDs. Like, they get excited about the new, the shiny. They want to spin up 5, 6, 7 little businesses, and none of them are actually making money, right?
Yes, yeah. And I've had clients where I'm literally like, do not start another business. Every idea does not need a business. Right. You need to take all these businesses out and put them on ice for a minute, and let's see, does the new idea fit within one of the 2 businesses you have right now?
Right.
And if it doesn't, let's just park it. We don't have to lose it. You might want to build it out later, right? And so to that point, where I sort of function for my clients, especially because I don't only work with folks who have ADHD, I work with all the clients. But I just can, right? And where I function particularly well for my neurodivergent clients is I can lend them my executive function. So when we're in this coaching relationship over the period of 6 months or longer, some people say with me longer, because they almost they have that craving for that complementary person to the thought process and their action process. And they think that they need to get a business partner. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes me being the business coach / consultant can be a sort of an outsourced creative partner for them, because they can just talk through what they're doing, and I can help them kind of sort and prioritize. And, here's the one that, well, what about this thing here? And how are you doing with that? And right. So it's to your point, you personally probably don't want to do all the standard operating procedures, but they do need to exist. But there's lots of ways to get those into the business. And, there's lots of, it doesn't necessarily have to be hiring someone. It can be, getting an operations strategist to come in and work with you and get them all set up. And, that would be money well spent, right? So there are lots of ways to do things. And again, that's what makes folks with ADHD particularly very strong. They can think of different ways.
Yeah. No, I do wholly see it as a superpower that, because if I can think through something and plug in something to mitigate that thing, then it's no longer a problem, right? It's a fixable thing, right? But you can't take someone that's neurotypical and make them wildly creative and have the expansive ideas that I have, or that other people that think like me have. So all of these shortcomings can be, mitigated with teams and systems and things of that nature, right? But you can't get what I have, or, what ADHD people have, by teams or systems. You have to find somebody like us, which is pretty cool. So there's tremendous value in that, especially in a marketing and advertising space where you come up with these wildly unique ideas that no one else that doesn't think like you could do. And that's what drives the real high level success and profitability of these companies. And if you put yourself in the right position with the right, company and team and things like that, you can make wild amounts of money. So it's a very, very profitable, exciting type of thing that can unlock insane levels of, there's really no ceiling, right? It's pretty cool. I love it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I wonder if I can just piggyback off what you just said there.
Go ahead.
About the teams. I mentioned earlier up that I'm giving a talk on neurodivergence and creativity, and sort of cultivating the conditions to thrive. And it's going to be at a conference this week. But I talk a lot about that. And it's a very short talk. It's 15 minutes. But how do neurodiverse teams operate? And when I say neurodiverse, that means a mix of neurotypical and neurodivergent. That's what neurodiverse is, right? It's a mix of people.
Sure.
A lot of people mix up neurodivergent and neurodiverse. So I just want to clarify that. So when you have a neurodiverse team, it's way more innovative. It's way more creative. It's just so much better. Where the problem lies is that a lot of people do not know how to lead or manage a team where people have different neurocognitive styles.
Yeah.
So what happens is the burden to sort of fall into line falls on the neurodivergent person, who is already kind of challenged by the conditions in the first place. So what I would love to see, and this is a part of my work, is yes, I want to be able to coach creatives of all stripes, including neurodivergent creatives, on how they can sort of operate in a way that's most efficient for them without forcing them into a neurotypical box. But I also want to use my own experience of having been a pretty unaware neurotypical person to sort of teach the neurotypicals who might end up being in more of the manager positions, because that kind of lends itself, right, to that skill set, on how to be more aware and how to make accommodations, which is not saying you're letting anyone away with anything. It doesn't mean they're getting an easy ride, but making accommodations and finding those complementary dynamics where that person thrives and therefore everybody thrives. Because as we said before, diverse teams thrive.
Yeah.
So it's so important that people just know even some basics about how does a neurodivergent brain tick? What does that person need to be able to do their best work? What conditions do they need? And sometimes accommodations do they need to thrive? Right? It's awareness that kind of has to go both ways for this to work. We can't just put it on the neurodivergent folks to just get with the program.
Yeah. I feel like that mindset spills over into corporate America from our schooling systems, right? Where it's just you got to sit down and shut the fuck up and write this little thing down. Everybody should learn that way. And it's no, that doesn't work. Especially for neurodivergent, especially neurodivergent young boys that have insane amounts of energy, and you want them to sit in a little classroom and be quiet for 7 hours a day because it's state funded, child care, basically, because we need our people to be at work, not worried about that. I got a lot of opinions on that. I don't need to digress too much, but that whole consciousness of this is how we do things,
yes,
or your special needs, making you somehow a lesser human being or something. Yeah. Right. And then it spills over into corporate America, and it's well, you were 5 minutes late to work today. And if that happens 3 more times, you're fired. It's what are we talking about? Right. So I've built my business, and every business I've been a part of is it's really about the objectives and the high level things that we're trying to do. What are budgets? What are timelines? What are the goals? Are we headed in that direction? And everybody's on board with that. I don't care if somebody worked 5 hours today or 20 hours or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's are we doing what we said we were going to do? I don't need to micromanage. Nobody does well in that, especially not neurodivergent folks. They don't need all this extra pressure on them. It's hey, make something beautiful that aligns with these goals and these timelines and these budgets, and we're good. And you can do that at home, working at 2 a.m. or 1 p.m. or whatever. I don't care. So that's how I built my business, because I knew I needed those things, right? And then the neurotypical folks could just plug right in and they set up their whole routine. It's super easy for them, right? But this environment nurtures that high level creativity, and the implementers on our team get to function however they want as well, which is great because they're very good at that. They're just all right, well, I'm going to be here and I'm not available in these times, and boom, 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 right? Where it's me, sometimes I got to work in the morning, sometimes it's in the evening, sometimes I get burnt out. A routine will work for me for 3 months and then just stop working.
Yes.
And I have to change it. And that's okay. I can't do the same thing my whole life. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And to your point earlier, the other businesses things, I grow a lot of food in my backyard, and I'm just looking out here, behind the computer here, and it's I was thinking this morning, I should just start a little farm stand. I could ramp this up and make a couple extra grand on the side. I really love this and really recharging. And I was just focus, Carl. No, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
I almost started talking to my wife about it, and she would have just laughed at me. And she's yeah, that's nice, Carl. Get back to work. Anyways, there we go. So
you touched on something there as well that I think is really important, is that boredom is kryptonite to a brain, and so it's on all of us to sort of either make it interesting for folks to work for us, or allow them to create the interest.
Yes.
Right? So if that means, like you say, switching up your routines, working in a different place, working late at night, because a lot of, this is a sort of a neurological thing, that the oh gosh, what's it called? The circadian rhythm is later
Yeah.
in the neurodivergent brain. So a lot of times folks are up, working their best from 11 till 3 in the morning. To me, that's like a nightmare. Like you couldn't even, you could hold a gun to my head and I would not be able to stay awake in the morning. I'd be useless. And then there was something else you said about how when you can create the conditions, actually this is lovely. I never really thought of it this way, but if as a business owner, you can create or cultivate like a culture and the conditions where a neurodivergent person can thrive, the neurotypicals will fit right in and do their thing. Because guess what? We are operating in a world that was built by people like us, for people like us. We're fine. Yep. We don't need any accommodations. We don't need anything to worry about us. We're good.
Yep.
Like everything is stacked in our favor. But if you can just assume, I have to build a culture where someone who thinks and operates differently from me can thrive, and they don't have to come and disclose, and they don't have to, put themselves in a vulnerable position in order to like get what they need. You get Boss of the Year award,
Yeah, I mean, like not to toot my own horn, but like I think the number of people that have worked for me and told me like this was an amazing company and I'm an amazing boss, like is not a short list, and it feels really good every time.
And you have stayed with you for years and years and years, so that's
plus.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and it's not because I pay them a ridiculous amount of money. Like we're like, but I mean, I take care of everybody, but it's because, and to be fair, I'm not hoarding all the money myself. We're just still building this business. Like, but yeah, it's because they love the culture, right? And they love to feel appreciated and seen. And, there are people on my team that have, autism and things of that nature. Like they feel like everything works just fine. Like if we talk, if there's something that comes up that we need to like address, we're just like, hey, look, this is a thing, like this happened, and let's try to do it this way next time. How do we help you do that? Like what do we need from you? What do you need from us to make this not happen again? Right? It's not scolding and reprimanding. Like they do amazing work. Like I want them to be happy and feel like they can flourish here, but also like I have to set up systems that allow us to make money or we're going to go out of business. Right. So, right. And when you operate from respect and inclusion and like acknowledgement, like, hey, we love your work, but this part of the thing isn't working for us. Like, how do we get there? Like, and that's how I parent, frankly. Like we started from a very young age speaking to my son, who I think probably has some similar neuro pathways to me. And it's like, everything's framed from like, we want the best for you and what you like needs to work for everything to work. So like when you have those conversations based out of respect from the beginning, it just makes everything easier. And everybody wants that, right? Like it's not you're bad, you're wrong. It's like, hey, this is what's going to help everybody. Like, how can we get on the same page there?
Yeah. Agreed.
And one other little note I took, the thing that's like crippling about ADD, that I think people listening to this will relate to if they have this, is that, or ADHD, apologies. Prioritization is so hard. It's so hard. Like I've got these 4 important things to do, and it's like I feel like I need to do them all at the same time right now, immediately. Yes. Right. So like I'll be doing one and like, oh my God, somebody messaged me about this thing, and then I'll switch over to there, and it's like I keep interrupting myself and don't get into the flow, because when I get into that flow state, I can hyper focus. Again, I can do anything. Like I'm confident about that in myself. Like if a human being can do it, I can probably do it if I can get focused enough, right? Which is crazy to even like feel that way. But I've done crazy. I did really great at math and science and art and everything. Like everything I've applied myself to, physical fitness and sports and whatever. So it's but like not prioritizing can crush me. So what I've figured out, and my wife kind of gave me this little nugget, was just like put things in the calendar. And that helps you go, well, I don't need to do that right now because I have a space for that tomorrow at 4:00. And I already decided that was a good time to do that. And then treat it like a VIP meeting. Treat all of my calendar like I'm meeting with somebody that's going to give me millions of dollars, and I need to impress them and need to like, so I got to be hyper focused. And that's a really, now I break that every once in a while. But once I start to feel crazy again, I'm like, oh, I need to get back to this. And it's always a nice anchor to come back to until I get a little bored and go on the cycle.
Different, right? Yeah. I mean, and that's great that you found that works for you. And the first thing I think is like, we really need to just understand ourselves and just be like, this is how my brain works. this thing is not a strong suit for me. I'm not going to shame myself about it or let anyone else shame myself about it. But, what, and as you were saying before, like what hack, what system, what can I put in place that's going to help me with this right now? And like you say, it's not going to last forever, so don't expect it to last forever. But does it work for right now? And there are certainly, prioritization is one that's so common. And, to your point of, don't expect a neurotypical person to come up with like 12 out-of-the-box ideas, right?
Yeah.
You could do that and they would come up with 12 very mediocre ideas, potentially. I'm not going to
And maybe they have a great idea or two. Like, they're not incapable of coming up with great ideas, but yeah.
It's funny. They had they've done some studies where they asked people to draw like an alien or draw a piece of fruit or something that might live on another planet. And the neurotypical folks all drew, things that kind of still looked like a regular fruit, but then had some like alien thing on it. Like, so it still looked like a pear, but maybe it was green. Well, no, pears are green.
But yeah, sure.
Like googly eyes on it or something.
Not very divergent.
Yeah. But the neurodivergent folks like came up with all these like wild and crazy like alien fruits. So like bore no resemblance to like an earthly fruit. Right. To that point is, don't ask me to draw something. Like I'm really good at drawing, relatively good at drawing, but I have to draw something that I see. I can't draw something from my imagination. Right.
Interesting.
Kind of makes sense to me. So don't expect me to start being able to draw from my imagination. Just as in the same way, I won't expect you to be able to take a list of 10 things and prioritize them and execute on them. Like, we all need some support. But if you, for example, were coaching me on, because I know you're an amazing artist, if you were coaching me and telling me, like, and helping me to draw something from my imagination, it might not be as good as yours would be or come as easily as it would be to me, but I'd have you there lending your divergence to me.
Yeah.
Right? So I could lend you my executive function when it comes to prioritizing, because it's easy for me. I'm just like, and then we like figure out what a plan is. And then I'm like, okay, so now what's the strategy? So you don't respond to the thing that comes in, like to your the calendar or whatever. We should not force ourselves and just say, okay, well, what support do I need? What does that mean?
There it is.
Is it a strategy? Is it a calendar invite? Is it an alarm? What is it? Right?
Yeah, it's introspection, right? Like, and sometimes you don't have the perspective to see the things about yourself that you need to see, which is why you need a coach, or you need a consultant, or you need a therapist, or you need some version of somebody that has experience looking and analyzing at things that people do in a diverse sort of way, so that they know, like, oh, hey, you sort of fall into these things over here, and these are some general tools and guidelines that help that type of cognition, right? I mean, it's the same thing when you go to the gym, right? Like, everybody's got different strengths and different imbalances and different injuries and different whatever. So, like, you get a personal trainer, yeah, you could go to the gym, you could stay in shape, but like, if you got a personal trainer that's trained hundreds of people, that's seen all these different injuries and strengths and weaknesses and flexibilities and stiffness and blah, 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 and they can customize a thing that's for you after analyzing your movements and your patterns of the way. Like, it's the same way. Your brain's kind of the same thing. It's just a different application of that same sort of logic. So yeah, and they say, hey, you should do a squat like this or with these kind of things so that you can fix this imbalance. Like, I'm sure that that's exactly how it works in like a more coaching perspective for, cognitive things. So yeah. All right. So we are coming up on time. But before we wrap, I did have one last question for you. Is there anyone or anything in your career that you'd like to shout out to the audience? Maybe a mentor, valuable resource, or favorite client?
Well, I could never do a favorite client because that's just not fair. But I've had lots of mentors along the way, and I think that that's actually, at a different point in your business, you need different support. So at the beginning, another business owner called Galia Guishan, who has a personal finance business, was really helpful in just like what I needed to do to even kind of get started, to put this out into the world. And then I've worked with different coaches along the way. I worked with Tara McMillan. I've worked with Charlie Kilkey. Being in this coach training program for ADHD. I worked with a fantastic facilitator called Tracy Winter, who has ADHD. All of my cohort, the other folks in my cohort had ADHD, and I just learned so much from them. So I would say that like wherever I am in my business, I always seek the right level of support for where I am, and it's always going to be different. And I'm so appreciative. Some of those people are people who are just out of the goodness of their heart sharing some of their thoughts with me, and sometimes most of the time they're people I pay for. Honestly, I invest in the support that I need.
Hey, look, that's all amazing. That's what you should do, right? If you can. Yeah.
It's well spent.
Yeah, I love that. And when you pay for the right person, it's not a cost; it's an investment, right?
Yes.
And it usually has the ROI. It should be good. So,
because it's like education. You leave a different person. You leave knowing and understand things in a way that you didn't before, and that can never be taken away from you. And you can always build on that.
Absolutely. So big shout out, by the way, to the Graphic Artists Guild, where I actually hosted Justine on a webinar that we mentioned earlier on, and you can probably find that on the graphicartistsguild.org as well. So, all right, well, we've been talking with Justine Clay, who's a business coach, writer, speaker, and ADHD consultant for creative entrepreneurs and freelancers. If people want to follow up with you directly, where should they go?
They should go to my website, which is justineclay.com. I'm sure you'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
You will see that there's a red bar at the top where you can download my free guide on pricing creativity. And if you want to hit the contact button and you want to set up an introductory call, you can just find that right there on the website.
Amazing. Definitely check out that guide. It's very good. I've downloaded it myself. All right, Justine, well, thank you so much for being on the show. And until next time, friends, we'll see you later. We really hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe to join us on our next journey through the world of art and business on the Pixel Retentive Podcast.